in conversation with Sherry McMillan. Sherry McMillan is a resident of beautiful White Rock, BC, where she often takes a kayak into the bay. A love of nature and language inspires her books. Her debut children's poetry and picture book, What the Sea Saw, won the coveted Indigo Chapter's Eater's Pick Award. She recently released a second book, My S. Mercies, which has been an Amazon best-selling book for children with disabilities. This is the book she wishes she had had when she was a child. It was written for children who have speech sound disorder like herself. Sherry writes with respect for her audience, taking a fun and fresh approach to subjects that are close to her heart. When she is not writing books or kayaking, Sherry enjoys being a guest speaker at schools and conferences. She's also an IT analyst. Sherry encourages her readers to lead with curiosity. And on today's episode of Auto Interview, it's my utmost pleasure and joy to have on the show today, Sherry McMillan. Welcome on the show, Sherry.
Thank you so much for having me, Peter.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show today. It's exciting. We're going to be talking about your book.
Thank you so much. It's always so good to speak with people, and it's amazing to me how the book world is connected all around the world. So it's
Absolutely.
amazing that we're able to connect across continents today to talk about a subject we both love.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Now, Sherry, you have two children's books published in the name of What the Sea Saw and My S Are Mercies. When your voice won't obey what you're trying to say, it's okay. I'd first like to ask you, why do you choose to write in the genre of children's literature? What piqued your interest, particularly in this field of literature?
Yeah, it was a bit of a journey for me. So I have been writing my whole life. I've written several novels, short stories, song lyrics, poetry,
Mm,
hundreds and hundreds of poems.
wow.
And I wanted to be published. None of those works are published. And then I was thinking as I was getting older and life was settling down and I'd raised my son that I wanted to finally become a published author. And I was trying to think, how do I do my demanding day job and write this big, meaty novel I'm thinking about? And you mentioned that I live in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. I'm so
Mm,
grateful to live in a little seaside town, and I have a kayak, and that's my real love is to get out of my kayak and just paddle. And one day I was thinking about how I was going to become published, and literally a seal popped up in front of me, and I was out in the middle of nowhere, so I spontaneously spoke to it, and it came out in
mm,
rhyming verse. It came out, hey there's seal, what do you see? I see you, do you see me? And I immediately thought, oh, that would be a good subject for a children's book, that
yeah.
universal moment when you see an animal in nature and you wonder if it sees you too. And I was instantly also reminded of how much I loved poetry as a child, and that
Wow.
had never thought about writing for children. It wasn't the thing that was top of mind. But as soon as I had that inspiration, I thought, okay, let's try it. So for
Mm,
that entire summer, every time I was out in the kayak, I would observe the seals doing what they actually do,
wow.
being very true to Mother Nature. And I thought, let's see, can I write this book? And I did.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing, really. I love your start. I love the start to what inspired you in the genre of children's literature. That's quite amazing to know, really. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, could you tell us a bit about What the Seesaw? How does it come about? What inspired the making of What the Seesaw? And I love it
Yeah.
to show a sample of it to the camera if you have one there with you.
Absolutely, I came prepared. So yes, in this book, we follow a child. So we see a shiny, plump seal, all whiskers and eyes, pops out of the water. What a
Mm,
surprise! And we see a child on the pier watching the seal. And this is a very common scene where I live, but I think it's also quite universal. I
oh,
do hear from people all around the world that can relate to this scene. There are seals in all 33 continents, one of the few animals that we see in every single continent all around the world,
mm,
33 different varieties. And one thing I'm really proud of, and there's quite a few subtle themes in the book that, we didn't want to at all be preachy or do anything other than have a love of nature and language in the text itself, but we did some subtle but important things. So
Yeah.
one of the things we did here is our child, you cannot tell the age, race, gender, anything that is sort of a specific demographic for a child. So it's
Mm.
lovely to see the variety of children who look at this image and say, oh, that could be me, right?
Oh.
And quite often it's because, you know, they've seen an animal. Sometimes it's because they have an orange puffer jacket. But then we
Well.
go throughout and we just watch the seal. And after that exchange, the focus changes and it's all the seal's adventures and everything the seal sees. And
Mm.
so again, these are all, every single page is something I've actually seen with myself or seen the seals do. We don't anthropomorphize the seals, so it's not having a tea party, it's not wearing a little bow tie, it's
Mm.
doing what seals do. And we also explore other parts of nature as well because the seals use a lot of animals. So this is probably my favorite verse is the geese flying
Oh,
overhead and our beautiful Pacific Northwest mountains. That's Mount Baker there.
interesting. Yeah.
Interesting fact about where I live, we're at sea level, but we have a mountain range. So we
Oh,
really have the most beautiful scenery. And speaking
well.
of that, I'm really pleased with this page.
Yeah,
So
the
one of my
duck
favorite,
everywhere.
right, isn't it beautiful? So one
Beautiful,
of my
really.
favorite books growing up was Where the Wild Things Are, and I love that we had pages that did not have any text. So you can make up your own
Oh,
verses. You can count all the animals. You can name them. It's really just for imagination. And then, of
yeah.
course, we had the
The
whales.
whale.
And so,
Yeah.
again, in real life, and this is a gray whale, which is actually bigger than a humpback whale, but it's a
Oh,
very peaceful, gentle whale. Well, whales are, but it comes
oh,
into our tiny little bay and likes to get all the marine life on the bottom. It's really good for our ecology that it comes in there and does some
yeah.
grooming. And then we come back to the beginning, which is something I love about this book. I always love something that is circular.
Mm,
And
back
so
and
we come
forth.
back, and now we have the same child looking at the seal, and we indulged ourselves here. We had the seal sort of waiting. Um,
Wow.
but when you give it a little bit more thought, then the question arises: like, did the seal really do all these things, or was the entire book actually in this child's imagination and just took a second to happen?
Wow.
We leave that up to the reader to decide.
Wow. Wow, this is quite illustrative, really. I love your answers to this question. It's quite illustrative, and every picture, every page has a message in itself to communicate. That sounds amazing, like something children really love to pick up. So thank you so much for sharing, really. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then, Sherry, you also have another title in the name of My S Messes. When your voice won't obey what you're trying to say, it's okay. And I love that title actually for a book. And
Thank
now
you.
I'd love to ask you, for readers who haven't read the book yet and without giving much information away, could you have a sneak of what to expect picking up My S Messes? Nice title, really. And if you have a sample there, too, I'd love you to share to the camera.
Absolutely. So that was, again, a surprise to me. I'm on a journey. I'm just putting up my hand to the universe and saying, what do you need from me? And I'm just as surprised as you are. So, first of all, I'll tell you, this is going to be a series. So, this is, of
Oh,
course, sea and coastline. And then there's
yeah.
going to be at least two more. So, we're going to do sea, land, air. So, we'll have the seal, and then we'll have an ocean or a forest animal. So we'll have
Yeah.
the old growth forest of British Columbia and the mountain ranges and all of that. And then we're going
Wow.
to do air, we're going to do a bird, and it's going to be in the marshland. So that was
Interesting.
what was on my mind. But when I wrote What the Seal Saw, I knew that was exactly the right title for this book. And I really just instantly knew that was what this book needed to be called. But then I
Mm.
laughed and I thought, what have I done? I've got speech sound disorders, and
Oh.
probably the most predominant of which is a lisp. So I couldn't
Mm.
say those sound S until I was 27. I've been
Wow.
avoiding S's my entire life. And then I thought, what have I done? I wrote What the Seal Saw. Now I'm going to have to say S all the time. And my S's are messes. So
Wow.
I kind of had
Wow.
the title very early
Ooh.
on. I had the title for this book and a vague idea of what it might look like before I'd even published this one. But I wasn't going to publish it right away. I was just kind of sitting on that as one of many, many ideas that I have percolating. However, as I was going out into the public and selling what the seal saw and speaking with people, I kept hearing over and over again from people that have speech sound disorders or that used to, even older people, because I have quite a few grandparents who buy my book for their grandchildren. So
Wow.
people who maybe suffered from a stroke and have apraxia.
Mm.
When I go out and I do events and I'm talking all day, as as I get tired, I'm more likely to stutter or to have other communication challenges. And so
Wow.
I might say to people like, bear with me, I'm getting tired. I'm a little bit slower with my speech or I'm stuttering. And
Mm.
I kept hearing over and over again, well, why don't you write a book about that? And I would say,
Wow.
well, that's interesting. I've got an idea for one. And I'd tell them the title and they'd laugh and they go, that's great.
Oh.
And then I had speech sound pathologists, speech therapists,
Yeah.
tell me that they were using what the SEAL saw in their practice. And I thought, well,
Wow.
that's amazing. And then I happened to have a brand new family member, a new great nephew who was born deaf. So all
Mm.
of these things started to come together, and I thought, I think I really need to write this book.
Wow.
So my SSR Message is the book I wished I'd had when I was a child. I
Wow.
looked and looked and looked, and I could not find any book for children with speech differences written by an
Mm.
adult that has speech differences. There's many that are written by experts, by doctors and speech language pathologists and communication experts, but
Yeah.
not by someone who actually has lived the
And the
experience. And in my
experience.
case,
Yeah.
right, I'm one of the 5% of the population that does not outgrow my speech impediments. And so they're with
Wow.
me for my whole life. So I still know what it feels like. So, main point in this book
Mm.
is the children are doing absolutely everything right. They're doing a great job, and it's the sounds that are misbehaving. And so,
Wow.
for an example, that we're cooking together, and this child has a neat station and has made a beautiful, I think this is a carrot cake. And then the sound W is just making a big mess everywhere, right? So,
Wow.
in this book, every single page is a word picture of what it feels like to have a speech challenge. So this is what it feels like for me stuttering. The sound is just repeating, repeating, repeating. And
Mm.
see, the sound, it's goofy, it's dizzy, and then it nails the landing and is cheering. But the child's like, oh, that's not fun. And so I worked with speech language pathologists to make sure that I had the
Wow.
terminology right, to make sure that we were accurate with how we portray
Nice.
different kinds of articulation errors. And
Yeah.
then we did some interesting things. So again, subtle but profound. So we have a few pages where, for example, here the R is playing hide and seek. And then all the letters hiding out are R combination sounds. So you
Wow.
could actually use this for speech therapy. You could use
Mm.
it just for empathy building. It works just as
Mm.
something that's fun. And
Mm.
then it also uh, is like my hope is that it helps children feel not alone. You're not alone in this. So I talked about how
Absolutely.
the sounds are misbehaving, they're goofing around, they're making a mess. But of course, in the course of the book, we learn what's good. So what's good, what's cool? Well, because
Mm.
I have speech sound disorders, I'm a world champion listener. So
Wow.
as the book carries on, we learn how to make peace and how to work with our sound differences and how to have
Wow.
patience and empathy for ourselves and for others.
Wow. Wow. This is quite a lot to take in, really. It's a lot to digest at once. So I love your answers to this question. And I love the making of the title, how you come with the word, the C, the shit and messes, because you had issues with that too in Time Park. So that's kind of amazing to know, really. I love the sound of it. And, the idea of the book, it's very profound and quite, real. Yeah. So that's quite lovely to know. Thank you so much for
Thank you so
sharing.
much.
Yeah. And I'm curious to know if you experience any challenges in the process of writing your book. If there is any, could you share with us what challenge it is and how you ultimately overcame it?
Yes, there's so many challenges. I think the just the mechanics of it.
Mm,
I am, of course, a creative person, and any writer is going to probably relate to this. We get inspired, we go into a headspace that's pretty solitary.
yeah.
We really are nurturing and growing something that's private, and then you go through this place where it's like, okay, I'm going to put this out into the world, which I will just take a moment and say, you don't have to. You are just as valid a writer and an author if you write for the joy of writing and just for yourself. Like that's perfectly valid. But if you decide that you want to put it out into the world, then of course you have to go through the publishing step. I'm an independent publisher. I work with a hybrid publishing house. So fee for services, which I think is really fair. I like that. It's transactional. It's really upright. And so I hire the publishing firm. My work has to meet a bar. They won't take it. They won't put their name on it unless they agree that it's something that they want to represent. So there's that level of validity to it. But then you go through the paces of editing and book design and all of that. And that is very linear. That's very much like project management, right? So you get just one piece of paperwork, one task, one decision to make. And like many of us, I'm doing this on top of a day job. So one of my biggest challenges is I get to that phase and there's a lot of decision fatigue. What size is the book going to be? Well, the size is really important. It impacts the cost of the book, not just in terms of ink and paper, but shipping costs, where it sits on a shelf. For me, writing for children, how does it fit in a child's hands? It's often given as a gift. How does it ship? How does it fit in a gift bag? There's lots of things to think about. And so one of the biggest challenges for me is that decision fatigue. And in particular, when it's a linear phase, if I have a lot of decisions and I can mull over them at once and then present them fully baked, that feels more natural for me. But the publishing process isn't like that. It's like, make this decision, make this decision, make this decision. And as you go, the pressure starts mounting, because on the first draft, you know, I love that expression. The first draft is perfect. Its only job is to exist, right? So every first draft is perfect. But as you go, you know, the pressure mounts of, you know, this is really going out into the world. Another challenge I can share is twice I have promised myself I'm not going to rush for Christmas, and then I rush for Christmas. So I put extra pressure on myself. So I'm going to try not to do that again.
Wow. Wow, that's quite lovely to know. You know, I really enjoy your answers to these questions, really. Well, they sound quite interesting. They sound quite informative as well. So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate it. You know, apart from What the Sea Saw and my S's and messes, When Your Voice Went Obey, do you have any other works you've authored or maybe currently working on?
We're right in the illustration phase for the follow-up to What the Seal Saw, and it's very exciting. In fact, in just a couple of days, the illustrator is coming over and showing me all of the illustrations that she's worked on. I've only gotten a few, and I can tell you when I get a text these days, it's very exciting. So I have another one coming to life, and I'm really excited. You know, another thing I can share about the journey is that I mentioned at the beginning that I'd wanted to be an author my entire life. And then I was trying to figure out, okay, well, how do I fit that in? And a big part of that was, well, what am I going to write that I want to get over the finish line? And so once I had What the Seal Saw and it was written, I still didn't know, do I want to be a children's author or what's next? And then there was this beautiful part of the journey where all of a sudden it crystallized for me, and I knew, okay, this is a series and what the series is going to be. And then I started writing madly. And so something I'd like to share for people that are maybe at that point in the journey is don't worry so much if it's taking you a long time. It took me about 3 years. And then once I figured it out, it went so fast. From the time that seal popped up in front of me when I was kayaking to the time that What the Seal Saw was available in stores was less than a year. It was so fast. So some people looked at that and said, oh my goodness, you're a machine. But what they didn't know is that it was 3 years of actively trying to figure that out. Like, I hired career coaches. I took courses. I set time aside. I made resolutions, but it was still 3 years before I even knew what I was going to write, never mind actually write it. So I think if you're in that place, and I bet there's somebody listening to this that is, like, be patient with yourself, and it's worth the wait. Don't force it. When you have the right idea, you'll know it. And it's just as important to reject the wrong idea. So keep going.
Wow, thank you so much for this advice. I really appreciate it. I love the fact that you said, be patient. It is worth the wait. It's an amazing statement. And thank you so much for sharing. That's so amazing, really, Sherry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Honestly, yeah. I really love your take on this, really. It sounds very pulling to me. So that's quite amazing. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, and now in case we have some viewers who are currently watching this interview, I would love to get a copy of your book. On what platform is it available on for purchase?
Right. So probably the one that everyone would think of is Amazon, and certainly it's there, Amazon all around the world. It's also available some major players like Barnes and Noble, and
Mm.
if you're in Canada, Indigo chapters. And in fact, I'm very proud to say that What the Seal Saw won the Indigo chapters Heather's Pick Award.
Wow,
So Heather
interesting.
Reisman, CEO, only picks about 10 books a year that she personally
Congratulations.
guarantees, and her in her language she loves like crazy. So I'm so honored that it received that designation. You can also go to my website, sherrymcmillan.ca, and I have listed there places you can purchase. I'd also really like for people to know that the book is available in I think we're at about 9 different nonprofits, either animal centered or art centered. And
Mm.
so, if, for example, you're in the UK, the Cornwall Seal Research Center, you can purchase from them. And then, of course, you're supporting seal conservation, research, rescue. It's at the Friends of the Elephant Seal in California. In Vancouver, you can get it from the Vancouver Aquarium, which of course does marine mammal rehabilitation. So I'm really, really proud that you could also
Wow,
purchase my book and have it support a nonprofit that
wow,
also encourages a love of our environment and good caretaking thereof.
wow, wow. Well, I'd first love to say congratulations on the award. That's such an
Thank
amazing
you.
one. Thank you so much. And I left a link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Sherry McMillan's books directly on Amazon, on Barnes and Nobles, on our website, and on also another platform. So thank you so much, Sherry, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. It's awesome having this conversation with you, and I love the way you smile.
Likewise, Peter, thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for this opportunity. And if anyone would like to just reach out and connect, please feel free to hit my website and use the contact me option. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks again.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. I love your energy. And yeah, I'm gonna leave a link to your social media following for people who love to give
Right,
a follow. That'll be great too.
right. I forgot to mention that. Correct. So it's Sherry McMillan Writes, Writes.
That's great. Thank you so much, Sherry. This was so fun.
Thank you. Likewise.
Yeah.